Howdy gamer, let's talk about the runes for Thresh. Coming into Season 10, not a ton has changed with Thresh or the runes that he's run, but there are a few differences that I want to talk about. So starting off with the Keystones, obviously going to be Aftershock. Aftershock giving you more armor and magic resist whenever you CC a target, so whenever you land your Flay or your hook. The offensive utility for Aftershock is really good for Thresh, as whenever you approach for a Flay, that's either going to set you up for a hook or that's just for you and your AD to take a small trade in lane. It's going to be giving you value there. And then the defensive utility of Aftershock is also going to be giving you value, because if you're engaged on by a melee support, let's say Nautilus or something, then whenever you flay, then you're going to get the extra resistances to survive that all in. So it has really good offensive and defensive utility. The changes to Aftershock coming into Season 10 are fine for Thresh too. Basically, the resistances offered early are a bit lower, but then Aftershock has more percentage scaling, as you can see. You have a base of 35 armor and magic resist gained, but then you have plus 80% of your bonus armor and magic resist. So Thresh is basically already building these items, and if he's not, then he's playing backline anyways, if you're building something like Redemption. So it's completely fine. The damage with Aftershock is kind of hard to get off for Thresh, as you're basically a ranged champion, and unless you're landing a hook and then positioning yourself on top of the enemy, then it's kind of hard to get the damage off. So it doesn't have the best synergy for the damage, but that's fine. You're mostly wanting to run Aftershock on Thresh just for the resistances. The cooldown is now only 20 seconds too, and that's very, very beneficial for Thresh coming into Season 10, as prior Aftershock was like about a minute cooldown, and you would basically only have one Flay trade for like the first 3 waves, and it was really, really bad. You really had to like use it properly. But now, regardless of your matchup, if you're playing into a tank support, a mage support, or an enchanter support, having this on such a low cooldown means that you can actually take trades against them so long that you're landing your Flay properly. So really nice, really solid rune. Secondary rune is going to be Font of Life. Whenever you impair the movement of an enemy champion, you mark them for 4 seconds, and whenever your ally attacks them, then they're going to heal for a little bit. With Thresh, you don't have any sustain in your kit compared to other supports, like let's say Rakan, or Rakan Alistar, where they have engage properties, but then they also have extra utility in their heals for their AD carry, as if you just have a heal for your AD carry or a shield, then things are just a whole lot easier for them. Especially early game, and especially whenever you're like trying to fight in the bot lane. With Font of Life, it makes it so that it's the same thing as Aftershock. You have offensive and defensive utility in it. Whenever you land a Flay offensively or a hook, then any damage that your AD carry is going to take from even just minion damage, whenever they're hitting the enemy champions, then it's going to help them just offset a good amount of it. And then come mid game, you can get a ton of value out of Font of Life, because not only will your AD carry be able to proc it, but then so will the rest of your team. So you go from one champion procking Font of Life throughout most of the early game to your entire team, so 3 extra champions. And that's when you can really start getting like huge numbers on Font of Life. So has pretty good general utility, and even like mage champions might get auto attacks off in a team fight, so it just makes everyone a little healthier. It's pretty generally useful. Third rune, all of these are pretty good choices. The way you should distinguish between them, basically with conditioning, you're going to get more stats later. Second wind is going to help you against poke champions, and bone plating is going to help you against melee champions. So these two are the simplest to use, as if you're into like enchanter or ranged lanes, just run second wind. With second wind, after you take damage from an enemy champion, you heal back some of the damage over time. This is only on a 10-second cooldown, and then it's also based on your missing health too. So with this only being on a 10-second cooldown, it's basically every single time you're taking damage, you're going to be healing a good amount of it. And then with bone plating, after taking damage from an enemy champion, the next 3 spells or attacks you receive from them deal 30 to 60 based on level less. This is on a 45-second cooldown though. So spinning the bone plating is way more expensive, and that's why it's better in melee matchups, as you're going to be negating like either their auto attack or like one of their abilities damage completely. And if you get engaged on by a melee support, it makes a pretty big difference. And Since the cooldown's so long, it makes it way less valuable against ranged champions, as they could auto attack you once and then run away, and then your bone plating's procced, it hasn't blocked any damage, and then they just come back and damage you again. With melee champions, they can't do that. They're either on top of you or they're not. So the cooldown being so long isn't as significant, and that's why second wind's just higher value against those champions. With conditioning, you want to run this in lanes that either you're counterpicked or just like you don't really participate in the laning phase that much. So lanes that you would either be counterpicked or like lanes that you could roam against. So the obvious example is like Morgana, right? If you've early picked Thresh and the enemy support responds with Morgana, you're probably just standing still in the laning phase until like 13 minutes. But with conditioning, you gain a bit of value for doing so, as if the Morgana isn't like smashing you or your AD, or they're not getting your tower bot lane early, then with conditioning you're just getting 9 armor and 9 magic resist for free at 10 minutes, and then a percentage of your armor and magic resist too. So this has multiplicative values with Aftershock, and then if you build into Zeke's Heralds, Locket, etc. But getting these free stats it's just so much gold value for free, and if you're not going to use these two runes as like laning tools early game, then it's fine to go with conditioning. But as a default, I guess just go with bone plating. It's the simplest to use, and if you can't think about the other two runes, or you like can't make a decision in the game, or if you're just looking for a rune page to copy and paste, just go with bone plating. Fourth rune is going to be Overgrowth. With Overgrowth, you absorb essence from monsters or enemy minions, basically minions, that die near you, and permanently increase your maximum health. And then once you've absorbed 120 monsters or minions, most likely minions, then you're going to gain an additional 3.5% maximum health. So come mid-game, Overgrowth is going to give you about a Ruby Crystal for free, and the value on that is so high. The support items are already pretty strong coming into this season, and to get basically just 400 gold value for free as support, especially as Thresh, where all he needs is just health and armor and magic resist, it's so valuable. The only thing you're really missing out on in this tree is Unflinching, but Unflinching is for melee champions that want to stay on top of their target, champions like Nautilus, Leona, Alistar, etc. So fantastic rune for Thresh. Second rune tree is going to be Inspiration. Your good options here are like, you have 4 good options actually you have 5 good options. Hextech Flash is a good option. Perfect Timing is a good option. Minion Dematerializer is a good option. Biscuit Delivery is a good option, and Cosmic Insight is a good option. The default I would recommend would be Perfect Timing plus Cosmic Insight. Mainly being that Perfect Timing has such a game-changing utility that it makes it pretty generally useful. Even if you're like messing it up completely, you can still get pretty good value out of it. And with Cosmic Insight, you're going to get 5% CDR, 5% max CDR, 5% CDR on your summoner spells and on items. So pretty generally useful. And with Thresh, you can use all of these, which is really interesting. But back to Perfect Timing. At 10 minutes, you gain a stopwatch that has the one-time status effect. So you basically get a Zanya's active once. And the way you want to use this is it can either be used wildly offensively or wildly defensively. So it enables Thresh to either like flash flay and be on top of like 3 or 4 or 5 enemies at once, and then still be able to survive because of this stasis where the enemy can't hit you. And then your entire team can follow up on basically like you flash flay box, and then your entire team follows up while you're in the stasis, something like that. Or it can be used against champions that would dive onto you and your carry, champions like Irelia, Kali, etc. If you use the stasis to dodge like one of their crucial abilities, whether it be a Kali dash, a ZR, a Karthus R, really game-changing ultimates, then if you use this to dodge it, especially as support, especially if it's a single target ability, then it has really high utility. So pretty generally useful. And then the other runes, I would say are harder to use, especially like if you're not used to laning with them. But we'll go over them after the stats. For the adaptive stats, the most popular is Adaptive Force on the first row, but I'm going to go with CDR. With Thresh, you're already going to be getting AD from the support item anyways, and having the AD early is nice, but having the scaling on the hook is more generally useful. Um, Again, like these three options are all good for Thresh. The CDR giving you more scaling and basically giving you like 6% CDR come mid game, and it's mostly just for your hook cooldown as well. The attack speed is used for getting control over the minion wave, especially level 1, and then to get level 2 faster. So if you have a lane that can do that, lanes like Draven, sure, run attack speed. And then with Adaptive Force, it's going to give you attack damage, and the attack damage is useful in lanes that against champions like all Enchanter champions, where the more AD you have, the more damage your E is going to be dealing, and just your auto attacks are going to be dealing. So once you flay hook them, the more AD you have, the more damage you're going to be dealing, especially against Enchanter champions who just have lower armor values. So that's that. All of these are good options, but defaultly, I'm going to go with CDR for just for the sake of this video. But you should be thinking about these and the third row on this. They're the things that are actually going to change the most. Yeah, for the second row, it's going to be armor and then magic resist. In the bot lane, armor obviously makes sense. You're going to be negating damage from both champions' auto attacks, the minion damage, tower damage, maybe dragon damage, etc. And then with magic resist, you might think like, why not just run double armor? With magic resist, especially in season 10, every single support you're going to be playing into, other than Senna and Pyke, are going to be dealing magic damage. Melee supports deal a significant amount of magic damage. Enchanter supports deal a good amount of magic damage, and mage supports obviously deal a lot of magic damage. So having the resistances at the start of the game is so valuable, as you're just more durable because of it. And then the first items that you're going to build are either going to be resistances or health as well. And either way, you're still going to be getting value on Thresh, as Thresh starts off with really low armor and low magic resist. So yeah, you just want the resistances to be more durable, and having them from the start is so much more valuable than having, like, let's say just more AD or something. So these are the default runes I recommend for Thresh. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer literally all of them. Now let's talk about a bit of variation. Starting with the second tree, still sticking to this rune page. Hextech Flash is okay on Thresh. Other melee supports make pretty good value, or get better value out of it, as they have immediate engage. Champions like Leona, Nautilus, if they Hextech Flash out of a bush, they're pretty much setting themselves up to be in max range, basically, to get an engage off. With Thresh, once you Hextech Flash out of a bush, you can land a hook, but you're usually at angles in which the enemy can just walk, you can easily dodge it. And with Hextech Flash, you're also just not going to be in range to flay unless the enemy's like already mispositioned anyways. So Hextech Flash loses a bit of value on Thresh compared to other melee champions. But it's still a pretty good rune, and the surprise factor in solo queue kind of trumps a lot of things. Minion Dematerializer, since Thresh goes a Relic Shield item now, whether it be actual Relic Shield or the AD variant, you can kill minions now, and you still give the gold to your ally. With Minion Dematerializer, it makes it so that you can either eat the cannon minion so that you and your AD get level 6 first on the wave that you both get level 6, or you can use it to eat minions as you're throwing hooks to land hooks onto enemies that are like trying to position defensively behind minions. And you basically just break a rule, right? Because every AD is trying to stand behind minions so that Thresh can't hook them. But if you're playing at like neutral range to neutral range, and then you dematerialize a minion and then throw the hook, then you can actually hit the enemy. So it has pretty good value there. Against melee versus melee lanes, it's probably going to become meta again for them to run Dematerializer, as especially at higher MMRs where the wave control and just the wave means everything versus the champions versus champions. Biscuit delivery, with Thresh, it's kind of hard to run out of mana, but since coin's not in the game anymore, and you don't have mana regen from like any other source, Biscuit delivery is okay. What Biscuit delivery does is every 2 minutes you get a biscuit until 6 minutes, and biscuits restore 10% of your missing health and mana, and then increase your mana cap by 50. So it's okay for Thresh. It's better for other melee champions as they're more gated by their mana versus Thresh, where you can just poke with your auto attacks and flays early. You don't really have to spend the hook and W a lot. And if you are, and then you're missing them or not getting value out of them, it's just bad play. So it's kind of a good band-aid rune though. If you were going to run like perfect timing biscuits, it'd be good, I think, or cosmic insight biscuits, it'd be fine. But cosmic insight plus perfect timing, the utility in both of those combined outweighs like having the band-aid of biscuits to replace one of them, in my opinion, for Thresh. So there's that variation. And then I already talked about these runes, but again, the attack speed letting you get level 2 is pretty crucial too. But anyways, going to the different keystones, Guardians become more popular coming into at least pre-season 10. I don't think it will be as popular. The way people use it for Thresh is to, whenever they're playing into enchanter matchups that completely outrange them, or mage matchups, so champions like Xerath, Zyra, Senna, Janna. Basically any enchanter champion has like a poke advantage against Thresh early. So with the Guardian, it makes it so that level 1, the enemy doesn't just have a free trade onto your AD carry. So the shield negates their first ability or auto attack completely. But the thing is with Guardian, it's on a 70-second to 40-second cooldown. So it's basically on a minute cooldown throughout the entire game. And that feels really bad. The shield amount is really significant, but especially in the bot lane and especially against enchanter champions that are running Airy or Arcane Comet, like it's so easy for them to proc the Guardian and then you block like 50 damage and it's entirely wasted. That and then the defensive utility for Guardian gives you and your ally more movement speed, and it gives you a shield. But if that shield and movement speed is wasted, then it's not good. And it's kind of anti-synergistic for Thresh because if you're playing defensive on Thresh, you're already behind your AD carry anyways with the Lantern. So having a bigger shield on the Lantern seems so weird, as they're taking the Lantern a significant distance away from the enemy. So why would you need the extra movement speed? That and the shield offered, it's just like anti-synergistic in a lot of ways. It's nice that it has a percentage AP scaling and bonus health scaling, both of which Thresh gets the AP for free from his passive, and then you can get the HP for free from runes and from your items. So that's nice. But you just win lane a lot harder with Aftershock. I'll have to see how this rune really shapes out. It obviously has really good value at higher MMR, for sure. Because the players actually play passive, and then in losing matchups, you negate actual damage, and it is meaningful. But for lower MMR players, hell no. This rune's like, I don't even know how to articulate it. Like, I'm stumped right now. One more thing on Guardian. In a team fight, Guardian can be procced a ton of ways accidentally, and if it's procced, it is down. It's down for the whole Dragon fight. It's down for the whole Baron fight. That feels really bad. In a structured team fight, let's say your allies are forward. Like a lot of times, your jungler will and should be too far forward, and then you lantern them back, and then you have a better position in a fight. But by doing so, you proc your Guardian too. It feels bad, man. Anyways, the secondary runes would be about the same for the Guardian page anyways. You wouldn't change anything. Other than the things you would adapt for the matchup. So suppose this, since you're playing into enchanters or mages. The next keystone is a pretty significant change with Unsealed Spellbook. Thresh is in a unique position in some matchups, especially matchups like Morgana, where you're counterpicked completely, and if you're willing to concede the laning phase, you can come into the mid game a lot stronger. The thing is, with Unsealed Spellbook, the best value you get out of it is when you have heal and exhaust. And if you're playing into melee champions that have to dive your carry, you gain an absurd amount of value from Unsealed Spellbook. As like champions like Irelia, Rengar, Talon, Akali, like etc., Aatrox. If you have Ignite, Heal, and Ignite against them, and they have to get on top of your carry. If you're positioning defensively on your carry, and then as they get on them, you use the box, use the flay, you lantern your carry away. If they flash, then you hook them, and you have exhaust and heal on top of that. That's when you get a ton of value out of Summer Spellbook. In the early game, you can do some cheesy things like having barrier for the laning phase, having ghost for the laning phase. You could even have one TP to get a roam off. You also get one smite early to potentially impact like a dragon fight or something. But with Unsealed Spellbook, you're basically conceding the laning phase and then having a lot more utility either through your roams or come mid game through your team fights. So Keystone would be Unsealed Spellbook and then perfect timing. Either one of these are fine, but Futures Market is probably going to give you more value because with this Keystone, again, you're playing for roams or for the mid game. So with Futures Market, you get access to boots of mobility a lot faster. And with this Keystone, you would also want to lose your bot tower pretty early and then swap your top in AD or mid in AD pretty early. So having the boots of mobility, even if you're losing lane, is pretty nice versus having a dematerializer. It's just like a laning tool, and then biscuits are also a laning tool. So it's kind of anti-synergistic with what you're trying to do here. And then Cosmic Insight would say the same. And then secondary runes would go with overheal and then conditioning. Again, just trying to spike mid game. And then these runes wouldn't change. So interesting option. Very niche in which you would actually make use of it. Like throughout an entire season, I don't even know if I could get like 10 games with this, you know, but I'll be trying it. It's a pretty off meta rune page. Anyways, again, here's the default runes I do recommend for sure in every single matchup for Thresh. Again, if you have any comments, leave them in the if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer literally all of them. If you're interested in some support gameplay, check out my Twitch. It's in the description, twitch.tv/StarNelson. And if you like the video, or if this video helped you, leaving a like helps me already. Bye-bye. See ya. I might play Thresh, but damn, Senna, she's kind of my girlfriend, you know?